Ready?
Yep.
Today is October 2nd, 12:47. It's the second meeting of the Lodging Tax Committee. I'm Jay Rosepepe, council member and facilitator. Also in attendance are
Keith Washington, Saints Tarkov.
Matt Murphy, Port Orchard Chamber of Commerce.
Chan Park from the Comfort Inn.
Jack Edwards with the Days Inn.
City, what am I? Brandy Reinierson, city clerk, city staff.
At this point in time, we had presentations yesterday from the folks, and we're here to make allocations. Hope we can come to a consensus on allocations. I'm going to start with a couple of brief remarks so the committee can deliberate. Again, I want to point out that I'm a facilitator and I do not vote or make recommendations. The first thing I'd like to point out is that it's a biennium budget by the city. This is our first year of a biennium budget, and last year $100,000 was allocated, and $100,000 has been allocated this year. Doesn't mean you can't go over with that, but I think it would behoove us not to, because I don't think there's a lot of support from the council to do that. The second thing that came up from the council, and I won't make a recommendation speaking for the council, but there was a question of would the LTAC committee be interested in having a reserve fund of X dollars for any new events that may come up. I would remind that right now it shows that we do have some funds in reserve that could be used in that, as opposed to taking it out of the 100,000. But I'll leave that for your all's discussion. And with that, would somebody like to start the discussion? We have approximately 143 or 134,000 requests and $100,000 to allocate.
And to go back to your comment about anything reserve, I don't think we should put anything in reserve. There is that reserve balance. I feel anyone new that would come to the table, it's obviously an unknown entity. We don't know what their history is. We could just be close to any of the walls. So I don't think their ask would be anything monumental. And if we thought it was really worthwhile, we probably could throw a couple thousand their way. I don't see anyone coming out of the blue to ask for $20,000 for an unknown event or unprecedented. So I don't think we should ask for anything additional this time. On top of what's already there.
Any other comments, or do we want to just put that in as a wedge holder right now?
Well, I agree with Jack. I know conversation has been around about new events come up. We want to give them the best chance for success, and that's why setting aside some of the funds to help incubate those events is the reason behind keeping the reserve. But I do believe that we have enough places to spend the money, proven quantities, and so that it doesn't really make a lot of sense right now to set aside a reserve balance.
Is someone allowed to come in and apply after the deadline?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They can apply, and then the council has a choice to reopen it up to everybody, or not reopen it up, or reopen it up to past participants.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah,
So why don't we put in 0 as a reserve?
So last year we started by talking about some of the, I hate to say the word, low-hanging fruits.
Go ahead.
But we did start with the lower denominations amounts because we thought they were reasonable. And that we generally fully funded those small ones and then worked our way up to the larger asks. If anyone wants to talk about that or disagree. So, and those are generally your Saints and your Mustang. So I guess the Seagulls would fall in that one too now.
So you want to make a proposal?
I propose that we fully fund those.
I'll second it.
Fully fund, which one?
Okay.
Oh,
The
I'm
Saints,
sure I
the
got.
Mustang, and I think for the amount of money they ask for, and when you look at their applications, and they're pretty reasonable. And I think their expectations reasonable. You don't, they say they may put 25 to 30 or sell it and put people in those rooms, it's not an unreasonable number. At least you're not.
No, we're not.
Stretching going for the stars.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for the Saints, I mean, we don't ask for anything out of line. I mean, we don't try to pad the bill or anything like that.
And by the way, I'm not sure in Rose Border, he can't second that, can he? Because that's his
okay.
own group.
I'll
You
second
can't
that.
comment on anything with the Saints,
Oh, okay.
just like Matt can't comment anything on the chamber.
Is he allowed to bring in his opinion and just not talk about the money, or does he just have to abstain completely?
I think if you're talking about overall, like if you're talking about, we've had discussions about heads and beds or bringing people in, I think it would be okay,
Okay.
but about a specific event.
Or them agreeing to a number they can't.
Right.
I would like to say that I agree, once again, with Jack. There will come a day when I'll tell Jack he's full of it, but right now,
Doesn't happen around.
my one concern with the Saints is that at the end of the day, they give $8,000 to $9,000 back to the community in the form of donations, which demonstrates the fact that they don't necessarily live or die, and I don't think that their event is going to be impacted if they did not receive that $3,000. I do believe it's a small amount and they put it to good use, but that is one that if one of the questions on the application is what happens if you don't get this money, and I didn't see what the Saints wrote for their answer, but I think the bottom line would be they'd have less money to donate to.
Right, and we would have to raise our entry fees.
But I'm not opposed to that.
But then again, I'm sure there's other organizations out there that if they're cut a little will also affect their programs as well.
Well, I know that, for example, the Chamber's tourism marketing one is a straight up, it's reimbursement. You don't give us the money, we don't do the advertising. That's pretty simple. So it's, and the same thing that holds true for the POPSA, marketing. But, none of the other organizations are necessarily running their events in the black to the extent that the Saints can run in the black. So, but I'm not opposing it.
Unless you guys asked for 2,400, you got 2,400.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that's what we did last year. And like I say, the reason we raised it up this year is because our advertising costs are going through the roof.
So if we go to the next one, as a hotel guy, I'm always wanting to give Visit Kids have a good portion of the ask. That's their job, to market our hotels 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's our only mission. So looks like last year we gave them a 17, it's around 17, so. With an asking 24, this year they're asking for 18.
I think it's necessary.
So you put the whole thing in there right now?
For now. For now.
One thing I kept hearing yesterday was marketing. Is there any way that we can have like just one body or one entity just be, at least just prepare like the collateral, not necessarily the digital, and just work the economies of scale kind of thing?
Well,
Just to make it-
the Visit Kids app is the only one designated by the state to do that work. But every chamber does that piece as well. Do they have to do a visit side to that? They don't, but do they usually do? Yeah, and it does make sense. And a lot of people will see that as an overlap, or or, because they both go for lodging tax in every municipality, the chambers and the tourism marketing, destination tourism marketing organizations. So, but can you get one right now to do just all the marketing? Probably not. It's been put to Visit Kitsap that they should be promoting every one of those events, and they do put on those events on their website and do some marketing for those, and they do some co-op and tie in, but that's probably a big ask on your part for one organization to handle everything.
Yeah, it's not going to
So-
be, it's not going to happen like next year, but can we kind of strive for that? Instead of just having every single group just focusing on their own marketing and struggling on their own, trying to reinvent the wheel every single time, or just kind of go to Visit Kitsap or go to Chamber of Commerce, be like, this is kind of what I want, and then we'll have some sort of,
Well, I know that
make it more efficient that way.
when we started Explore Port Orchard, and Brandy was involved in it at the very beginning, and that's what it was designed to do. It was designed so that, Fathoms and POPSA and the market and the chamber, we weren't all placing ads in, the same publication for our different events. But as it evolved, we discovered that, advertising in the Country Register doesn't do a whole lot of good
Right.
for the greater Port Orchard area, So that's why, the City Arts Gallery said, I don't care what Explore Port Orchard does, we're still going to do this. And Fathoms was, well, we got to thank our sponsors, so we got to put a specific ad in Discover Kitsap to thank our sponsors. So that's why, the marketing part continues to be fractured. As far as the creation of the collateral and stuff is concerned, it would be nice. I don't know what Visit Kitsap probably ended up getting, $400,000 from the county, and so you would think that they'd be happy with 400,000. And the way the county looks at it, I think Fathoms is the only person from South Kitsap that applied for lodging tax.
That's correct.
Because the message we get from the county is that you have no hotels in the county. Nobody in Port Orchard contributes to the county's LTAC, so South Kitsap organizations don't deserve any LTAC dollars from the county. And
She has pressure by the county. Visit Kitsap has pressure by the county commissioners to promote those Silverdale hotels.
right.
In the majority. Now she, for goodwill, does, and Port Orchard is included. There's been some ads where our hotels were featured.
Mhm.
She was doing a nightlife piece in Nightlife in Port Orchard.
Yeah.
Because we have a great little bit of live music scene, and she was doing some stuff there. So she doesn't necessarily, she has to show her stakeholders what she's doing, but
Right.
and answer them. But she does go outside the box.
And we go, I know that the night market and for the cornhole, we went to her and she gave us $500.
Yeah.
And that was our budget for the cornhole this last year, was $500 that we received from Visit Kitsap. But so Chan, I guess the answer to your question is I don't think so.
Right.
Because Fathoms is going to want their marketing
Right,
material designed around their events and their color scheme, and I think what Patty has done for Visit Kitsap and her rack cards for the museums, she's got
Go ahead, I got one thought.
the museums and gardens, and she does a great job promoting Kitsap County in general in that direction.
I go back to what Jack said last year. I know you weren't here for neither one of you were for deliberations, and that was, I think you kind of made the point several times yesterday, and that was that how do we and how can we stress that you have your event, but you put things on your display, your flyer or something for the various other events that are possibly coming up. I mean, POPSA does a pretty good job. I looked at their flyer. They had they didn't care whose event it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was listed on that one calendar because they see if you come to other people's events, then you're hitting our merchants. So I think that's why they looked at from that viewpoint. And I think you were stressing that a little bit last year and a little bit this time about, don't forget to include other folks, because other folks benefit by your event, and when they have their event, you'll benefit too.
Yeah, and that's what Explore Port Orchard, our pieces are more evergreen now, because it's like, we can't put dates on it, because their dates will change by 2 days between this year and next year, and so, or we can't, say, hey, the market is a great place to eat, because we don't know if there'll be a restaurant in the market next year. So, we try to do everything as generic as possible, but all the good things there are to do here, and, Jack's point about, putting logos on everything, the trend is nobody wants to look at your logos.
Right.
As if I'm looking for a place to go, I'm not going to come to Port Orchard because there's a Comfort Inn in Port Orchard. Now I'll go to the website and I'll see all the cool things that are there, and then I'll see that there's 2 options for hotels. But putting in a beautiful ad the logos of the restaurant, the hotels.
And I was just talking about how you link stuff,
Mhm.
whether it's an
Right.
ad or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you were kind of getting to. How do we get synergy among the different
Yeah.
people instead of everybody doing everything themselves?
Right.
And stuff.
And answer your question, Shannon, not related to what we're doing here, but other municipalities, other counties are like that. So Jefferson County will give 90% of lodging tax to their visitors' tourism destination, and they're the one who does it, and that's it. So,
Mhm.
but here in Kitsap, every municipality from Port Orchard and Bremerton and Poulsbo, they have lodging tax committees that do this exact thing.
They typically give the Bremerton gives most of their money to the Bremerton events.
Right.
And, they are funding some Visit Kitsap now too, aren't they? The Bremerton,
That's questionable this year.
that's true, since they gave so much money to the conference center.
It's questionable this year whether or not, if they do, and if Patty, and if Visit Kitsap will even accept their amount, because it may be so little that she can't do enough with it.
Yeah.
So do we have another recommendation?
I'm
Still have 73.
I'm gonna jump to the one on the table that I know kind of know how Matt feels with, and that's with the foot ferry. And after looking at the numbers, if this was a business, it'd be out of business. It does, nothing supports it, except for those three big, the 4th of July and the 2 3-day weekends. So I'm not really for funding that, unless we can find a way to fund those 3 days.
Yeah, I added up and I expanded my search, my numbers, and I printed it and left it on the printer. But it included, so I started with the Harbor Festival. I think it was for 4th of July, and I think Brewfest, Beer Fest, or whatever was in there. Mustangs, Saints, and then Labor Day weekend. And based upon the numbers from this year, that would have cost like $2,700 to fund those major weekends. So if we did anything, I would say let's fund let's fund it $2,500 and say we're going to do.
Do you want, I can pull up that spreadsheet. I have
Sure.
a 2020 estimated cost for the spreadsheet based on the proposed rate.
My thing was, I went, you gave us an estimate of approximately I think it was $1,800 to run it,
It's $14.15 a day.
yeah, 14, 15. So, on days that you have 100 people, that's $14 a trip.
I know.
I'm going like, isn't Uber cheaper? I wasn't being that facetious about it, but I think it's a good question to ask.
You're right.
And the one I looked at, quite frankly, was Port Orchard with the Blackberry Festival, and after that, I was kind of like,
After Blackbird, that's the one that actually makes enough money to pay for itself.
yeah. So
So here is.
So what's your thoughts, Brandy?
So the 176.94, that's the 2019 rate. I just did a 3% increase. I think last year it was 2.3, so I just did a 3. So the new rate for 2020 is expected to be 182.25 at a max. It could be a little bit lower, but with that said, if you want to keep, let me see, I think I can go, so you keep Harbor Festival, we keep in the parade.
can see the numbers to justify that one.
It's only an hour anyways, so if we take that way out, if we take that one out, only, and then we take out the miscellaneous Sundays where there is no event or are no events. So right now, Harbor Festival, 4th of July, Beer Festival, that's Bremerton's, they want that,
They can pay for it.
right? And then they do it 7,000.
Yeah.
So the 4th of July, you've got 14 hours is,
4th of July is a holiday for Kitsap Transit, so they do not run at all. So 10 a.m. to midnight.
okay.
And what was the ridership?
They were the second highest, I believe.
Yeah, there's, the rate charge 2,400, it's 607
371.
collected.
Yeah.
371 total?
Yeah, 371 participants and collected $600 in cash. So second Harbor Festival's third, right? At 300 and
They didn't
some.
anything
No.
that last hour.
Harbor
really.
Fest? They were just 219.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So that's what it would. So if we come down.
So we would get rid of the Beer Fest then, because we said that was,
There's 13 riders.
I don't know that Bremerton would commit. Oh, I see what you're saying.
we don't commit to it.
Correct. Yes.
We'll
Okay.
take the expense out.
So this
I
is
guess
the
it's
rate.
13 riders in 2 hours.
So this is the
7 more
total
participants.
cost.
And I know it's crappy, but, you know, we certainly, I'm gonna speak, you know, again, my roll crosses over here, but even the Mustangs and the Saints, you know, 150,
Yeah.
you know, max, it's hard to, and I know, Randy, that you said that, you know, part of it may have been a lack of publicity, but.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I don't
but
know.
I look at bang for the buck and I go, okay.
And I don't think the ferry really impacts the Mustangs or the crews. Really, it's a big impact. That's not where people typically would come from. People are gonna come in their cars for car show events. They're not gonna be riding the ferry back and forth.
And I think Jack's point yesterday of, for Mustangs, 100 people rode the ferry, that's probably 50 people
That's right, 50,
that rode the
Coming in
ferry.
and going back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 50 people coming in.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It'd be the same for ours too, for the crews.
And I always estimate that some people will come anyway. You know,
Right,
if the
right.
ferry's not available, some people
They'll
will
find a
still
different way.
come.
Mhm.
So.
So with
we'll-
these events here, total cost to run the service is about 8,700. City's portion would be 43 if we do 50/50. So that's, and then you'd have to say that maybe 1,000, 1,500 is what we're gonna get back in revenue, if not
Okay.
2,000.
So maybe 2,500 is our,
Could be.
does somebody want to put that as a wedge? Is that okay with everybody right now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, now, the one thing that you brought up yesterday was that, you know, some of your guests
It's
do like
essentially an amenity.
to use that.
Yeah,
which
it's
is a
just an
shame.
amenity. It doesn't bring in any.
It doesn't bring in,
Mhm.
it's something for them to do as an ancillary once they're already here.
Yes.
Being slow.
And the only
That's
downside
what
is that if they want to go visit Seattle for the day and do the ferry thing, then
They would
puts a
have to
nix,
drive or
puts
get
a nix
an
on
Uber.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Save on this one, just in case.
Yep.
Not trying to keep your job.
No, no, that's good, that's good.
Just like I tend to think of the museum, that people aren't coming here, staying in the hotels because of the museum, but it's something, somewhere we send them once they're here.
When I was here, 2007. Since 2007, I've had less than 10 guests ask me where the museum was. So they did bring in 10 guests.
I never had anyone ask me whether
It's because they do such a good job marketing it, people already know where it's at.
So, when you go back to council, when you have your meeting with Bremerton, they have to match that 2,500, right? And if them-
Typically, they match whatever the city puts in.
So-
Yep.
And they may say they would like to add some days or something, I mean, you know,
Correct.
but, you know, on that, but on the other hand, they may not.
And the Port of Bremerton did that a few years back too. They said, hey, we don't believe that all of these events benefit our boaters. We believe these handful of events do benefit our boaters, and that's what we're willing to contribute. So it's not unheard of.
But are they all? I mean, if Bremerton comes back and says, "All right, fine, we'll do 4," are we expected to come back at 4? Because they're going to say, "No, by golly, we really want the beer fest." You know, I mean,
I guess I'll find out when they have the talk.
when you're sitting across the table from them and they say we want beer fest, and we say we don't want beer fest. You want beer fest, then you can.
I don't think we're saying we don't want Beer Fest, we're just saying.
We're not
you can go ahead.
contributing.
Right,
We're not
that's what I
contributing
meant.
to
That
Beer
night,
Fest.
that day,
Right.
yeah.
So,
I don't know that they would expect 100% match to what they're contributing. I think as long as we have a conversation with them that says, this is the reason why we're contributing to X amount, I think they'd be okay with it. I don't know that they would pull out totally because of that.
Because even if their downtown merchants like it, these numbers are just plain hard to argue with.
they are. And
But
they're-
both of them do state that this isn't something that they are, it's a service, it's a service that we're providing to
Mhm.
the public and maybe our patrons downtown. It's not
It's
it's
service
not
gets up
designed to make
transit.
money, if you will.
It's a service Kids Up Transit should be providing.
Right.
All right, that was that one.
I don't know how to link all these chambers and pops at once. We'll have to have a little clarification probably. It's easier when you guys do the presentations in one lump because we know what we're getting. And so as we're talking about tourism marketing, straight marketing for tourism, Matt, is that going to be the Visit Port Orchard, Explore Port Orchard
Yes.
component? Is that the main one? Or?
Yeah.
Does that cross over with, I'm asking a question, so does that cross over partly with POPSA?
You have to ask him.
Okay, totally, okay.
So that's
What would you like to do?
Yeah.
Probably fully fund.
Let's explore portion.
Oops.
I have a heart attack, guys. Okay.
And then when we're talking about this,
Which one?
would that be the
Marketing?
you can add, you're tied in better than anyone else.
Yeah,
Is that
so
the same thing.
my
in essence?
concern with the POPSAs, if you look at their applications, and they did this 2 years ago when I sat on the committee, they're asking for 100% of their expenses. So they're looking at the 10-7, and which one are we looking at? Marketing.
And what I thought was
That's
interesting about
advanced.
the POPSas is both of their applications, they were anticipating 2,000 room nights for each of those. Where the next closest one would have been
Yeah.
a chamber at 200. I mean,
Well,
it was
you know,
really an unrealistic number.
And these are, and that, I can tell you that those are numbers that are really difficult to ascertain. We kind of do it like Chris did it, is we take, okay, we have
Estimated calculation.
X number of visitors to the website, 10% of them are gonna come, 5% of them are gonna stay, 2% of them are gonna stay in a hotel versus a friend, and that's kind of how the numbers we look at. But if you look at, the total costs for the POPSA marketing is 10.7, but they're not including the $2,200 that they get from, the Walking Map sponsorships. So right off the bat, you're looking at about, $7,600 is what their true need is. And they do the same thing on the other application. And so, because their argument would be that, well, it's projected, and so we're going to ask for all of it and hope that we get some of it back from up above.
There is a strategy to that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Always is.
But, if it's generating income, it's like with the Seagull Festival, we generate some income. 3,000 is what our shortfall is. 10,000 isn't what their shortfall is.
So would you like to propose a number?
7,500.
I think I'm okay with that, instead of fully funding it. You shed a little bit of insight on something we.
I just want to say something funny when you were, and you may not find it funny, but, you know, when you were talking about the, you know, we take a certain number of our hits,
Mhm.
I'd like to remind everybody that 1 million people were supposed to show up at Area 51. You know,
Right.
Based on the number of hits, and that's
Yeah.
that's not what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where I'd say 1 million people hit it, and then only that,
Oh my gosh, with that media exposure alone.
0.3% showed up, so.
Sorry, I gotta admit, I was following it that weekend just to see how many people did it.
And granted, I'm a fan of Siegel. I was there when they started, because I was a member of the first Harbor Festival Committee before it was even in there. And I got to do the very first hot wings tasting and as a judge, and I'm a fan, but I tend to know that most of these events don't bring a lot of outside visitors or a lot of hotel stays. I mean, they might bring people from Gig Harbor
Right.
or Bremerton or Silverdale.
Yeah.
They're not, nothing that we do in town here is really a huge tourism. The last time we had one was Debbie McCover's. That was a true.
Well, I mean, and this could be a time.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
outside. Yeah.
This could be a time when we talk about the RCW's definition of
Yeah.
tourism, and it's, you know, the only place ever the question of where they come from and how long they stay and where they stay is in the JLAC report, which, as far as I can tell, gets sent to who do you send that to?
The state.
Which department?
It's the joint lodging tax
It goes
legislative.
to the, it goes to the
committee.
Joint Lodging Tax
It's-
Legislative Committee, and it sits in the bottom drawer someplace. If it was truly that important, it would have been a definition that they define in the RCW. And the RCW, tourism is the LTAC is used to generate tourism funds. The cigarette tax doesn't go to promote cigarette smoking. You know, things like that. So you can't say that the lodging tax is designed to put heads in beds. Ideally, you know, that's what it, you know, should do, could do. But the fact that we're bringing in hundreds of people that are shopping in our town is truly
Is true. Shopping, then the retailer should collect that tax.
Hmm?
Okay, but that's a
But-
different.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. So you
That's a
know,
conversation you had probably 2 years ago and we had last year, so.
you know, the heads and beds thing is purely a made up fallacy.
Well, I don't think it's, you know, the whole reason behind the lodging tax. They just kind of have that little line in there talking about it.
Oh,
It's- it's
Where?
not-
What little line?
There is a line in the RCW that talks about, I have to find it, it's not heads in beds.
It's either in the RCW or the WAC, which describes.
Yeah,
I've seen the whack where
But
it
it's
talks about
just-
people staying the night
Yeah, staying
outside of
overnight.
50 miles.
Yes,
Yeah.
50 miles.
Yeah.
But it's
Mhm.
not the end-all, be-all,
Right.
because it just doesn't stop with that
Right.
line.
Right.
So, you know, people coming in from out of town, we went to the Prosser Balloon Rally this last weekend. I met the Chamber of Commerce person there, and I said, you know, when you go to the lodging tax, you let them know that I came from out of town,
Yeah.
you know, and I ate 2 meals here, and, you know, these are the
Right.
things that we did. And so, you know, when we look at the events, I don't think it's fair to say that, you know, if we bring somebody in from Paulsbo to spend money in the city of Port Orchard,
That's a good
That's a good
expenditure.
thing.
That's a good thing, and
Yeah.
I think that's what Jack was advocating for last year, because Jen and Jack, I'm not
Mhm.
hearing either one of you saying that your hotels are empty, you know, right now. I mean, no, I mean, you have good business, and you know, that you'd be more interested in marketing
Right.
than the event bringing in. That's what I'm hearing.
But as the one who pays the fund,
Yeah.
we like to make sure that we're getting some kind of return on our investment.
Right.
but it's not your investment.
But we have to collect the tax.
You have to collect the tax, that's right. So it's the people
And
coming
actually
into
pay the
town.
tax.
It's the people that come into town.
Oh, of course, yeah, right.
Okay, just moving on. We still have 51,000,
Yeah.
and we still have
How much-
four to fund.
How much do we have asked left?
Well, glad you asked that question. So the ask is
32.
60, 70.
77, you got 51. So, oh, yeah, so would anybody like to take one of them and talk about it? Do you want to finish off with OPSA?
Sure.
I noticed nobody wants to tackle the princesses.
Last year was that. Last year was that.
Wow.
So,
Is everyone okay with that 15,000 again, around that number?
So that's placeholder.
Okay, placeholder's fine.
Yeah, because once again, you know, they account for their expenses, their total costs, and that's what they're asking for. But here they didn't account for the $15,000 they have coming in from other sources. I think. And I do think there's some overlap on the expenses, honestly, between POPSA and POPSA.
All right, that's placeholder. So,
Yeah.
you want to talk about
chambers?
Chamber?
Yeah.
Keith, you're being awful quiet.
I'm just taking it all on.
Okay,
Trust me, when it gets to a point,
okay.
Look, is this kind of misleading? There is no ask on this one, right?
That's right.
Right,
They
because
ask is-
last year they asked for it all in
Right.
one, and this
The ask
year
is
it's
here.
three. Yeah,
And then here.
Yeah, they
And
asked.
the middle one.
Yeah.
in the middle one, those three.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
asked for 25,
25.
5,
And last year they asked for 30.
30.
Yeah.
And last year they got 22.
Total, all right. So if you do, that's 12, 27. I can't talk about it. Who's I gonna leave it with? Oh, Fathom's will be the big winner for that. That's a big ask.
Well, if you look at what they asked for last year, they only asked for 1,000 more, basically, this year than they did last year, and we gave them 15,000 last year. I'm sorry, yeah, 15,000 last year. So does that mean that they're able to cope with that 15,000? You know, does that work still? Is there anything added? I don't, you know, there's nothing. It doesn't seem like there's anything really added on.
Can I throw something in here?
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw some things in and then see if this works.
It works.
That works, yeah.
It works. I know it works there, but what I'm saying is,
It helps it. I
Thanks, time for another
we never really talked about this, the city museum.
Well, there you
It's
are.
a small
That's what I'm
ask, it's a
saying.
small ask.
Yeah.
it's a little bit higher than they
I'm
had
not
last
sure,
year.
I'm not sure what they're worthy of. I mean, you work with them better than anyone else probably as well. You have more insight than we do, so. And I'm not sure when the materials, if they're really marketing outside the area either.
Well, you know, one of the big things, and I can tell you that the Country Register is huge, you know, and they do put the money into the Country Register. Trying to find her application here to see.
I just filled in the blanks because, we were there, because that was, looking at the other ones from Fathom. So it'd be like, you want to raise one, and you can find it where you
That's
get
how I
it
know.
from.
Fathoms needs to go up a little, and museum down a little, or but it's actually good where it's at. You know?
I mean,
Shouldn't-
and you could take that down. I mean, if you did that,
Five to that.
21.
We gave 5 last year, they did with it. 21 there. And Matt, it's probably the first time the chamber got the full ask.
That's because Matt's on the board. If he wasn't here, he'd be trash.
Couldn't speak.
Well, I can't say if you're going to cut anything from us, cut the Explore Port Orchard,
Oh.
because I mean, again, that's a strictly path. So looking at the tourism budget for Sydney, you know, and I don't know what to make of this, because on their other income, you know, they've got the 37 from general and 1,000 from donations. I don't know enough about their budget to know. You know, so they're saying their total So they did take it into consideration there. They have $3,400 in print advertising.
I'm sorry, did you enter all the reimbursements?
Hmm?
Did you enter all the reimbursements right now for this year?
On a different spread, oh, not for this
This
year.
year I didn't because I don't have those.
Oh, you don't have this, okay.
I started to and I looked at it, it was 2018. And I was trying to pull up the PDF and I can't pull up PDF for some reason.
You know, they got, so the budget for the museum is $11,000. It includes $3,500 in print advertising, $3,000 in internet, $1,000 for the website, the $800 for the sign, you know, $1,600 in yellow pages. So I think there's some area there that they could trim. I mean, it's we're.
Yeah, I kind of like it the way it sits now.
Okay, so the one that we didn't really talk about, that we forced it, for lack of better words, is Fathoms.
Yeah.
Last year, they had a big ask because of their trucks. This year, it's, you know, more, not status quo, but more of keeping the, going on. And Madam, we look at you to say, you know, I got more of an education last year, and Jen, I don't know about you this year, but how much they represent Port Orchard, but does that necessarily transfer into people coming to Port Orchard?
We had talked about them sending the floats to other parades. Is that really helping us out?
Well, I can't tell you what it does do, and it may not be much, but when you go to one parade, you're more likely to get their participants to come to your parade.
That's true.
And you know, and it always kills me, and we've had this discussion for generations. Their overall attendance is 600,000. You know, they say that, you know, because they're on the TV for the Seafair parade, that reaches, you know, a third of a million, you know, or a quarter of a million people. So, you know, their numbers are, you know, because if you look at their numbers, their projected numbers, I think these are realistic numbers that they've put down here, as far as how many people. You know, they teamed up with the Pirates Rendezvous last January, and Jan said that was a great weekend for him. But
Really? On a side note, I heard that some people didn't want them back.
There was a little miscommunication in the beginning, but it was solved.
And not that it was, I don't really have any knowledge, I just was curious.
Mhm.
No, they're already coming back
Okay, that's good.
this upcoming January. We're already sold out that weekend.
Oh, good. So now I know to raise rates in January.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at $10,000 for events marketing, which I have to agree with Jack again, that you know, a lot of the things, you know, their breakfast with Santa,
That doesn't.
you know, their Easter egg hunt. You know, I think that those are some areas. Concerts by the Bay are a big thing, but I don't know that brings in a lot of people from out of town.
For me, that's just like the ferry. It's a nice amenity on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just walking distance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could
it's an
literally
event.
hear it once you step out of the room. You can hear it from our property.
Right.
So the guests always ask, "What is that?" Well, if you like, you know, live music, just go down there and walk there. And they usually do. One thing that they do bring business is the 4th of July. That always
Mhm.
brings a good business.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I know of looking at their budget. You know, those two items, their event marketing and their concerts by the Bay, represents $20,000 of their budget that they could not have to fund. I know when we do sponsorships, we build into the cost of the sponsorships because they do ads to thank the parade, the fireworks people. You know, you take that money out of the fireworks sponsorships to buy those ads, because they buy probably almost 2 pages in the Discover Kids app to thank their sponsors, which is part of this expense too.
I think for that reason, I'm okay with it as a stand. Why did the chamber ask, your overall ask, why was it less than last year?
Well, a couple things. One is that we are, we're learning efficiencies, you know, I mean, because I think if you go across the board every year is a little bit less for us. So we are, much to the chagrin of my board, I'm learning to do more with less. You know, getting those economy of scales like I talked about at the port meeting, leveraging, you know, $1,000 worth of print advertising can get me $2,500 worth of advertising from the Sun. So leveraging those types of things, but and we're rolling things out. You know, it used to be our certified. We spend $9,000 a year on certified. You know,
Wow.
we're not doing that anymore. We're just doing CTAC, and CTAC is $1,000 versus the $9,000.
Yeah.
You know, because if the budget's getting cut, I mean, I could ask for 20 and you give me 12, I cut certified. You know, so that's where I can say right now, if you were to ask, I don't ask for any more than I absolutely need. I don't build in a cushion like I know. But you know, we're doing less. And remember, part of the Explorer Port Orchard object was to combine that advertising, and we're not doing that, you know, because Fathoms is still doing their page and a half, and the museum is still doing their stuff. So, you know, we got our brochures. We printed I don't know, 30,000 brochures last year, and you know, we're using those this year. So next year I may ask for another printing of brochures, but right now that's all I want to spend.
Yeah, plus all the money I dropped at the event.
At the auction.
At the auction.
At the auction,
That probably
yeah.
helped a lot.
It did, yeah.
I think I'm okay with the proposed allocation.
That's good to me.
Brandy?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from everybody is more of an emphasis on marketing than the actual events itself. That's kind of what I'm saying. You grow
I like
what you
to-
look
I
at.
like-
But unified,
to hear that.
unified marketing?
Yeah, you know, on that side of the coin, and it continued to put that as the emphasis when I talk to the council. But
I think, and I think that's a good reasoning, at least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And we like to see them, all their organizations, you know, advertise outside the area,
Yeah.
not just go in your local periodicals.
And I think, Jay, that, you know, that emphasis on, I mean, that's why we are funding events, because they do play a role.
right.
But you know, that should be enough money to advertise outside of the area, inside the area advertising.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out as a,
Mhm.
you know, not as a
Right.
negative.
Now, I am concerned about that number at the top, Jay.
2,500?
The ferry. You know, because I don't know how, and you've been on the council now for what, going on 3 years?
2 years.
2 years. When that gets presented to the city council, will you have already had your meeting with Bremerton before this is presented to the city council?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I will tell you, at least from my opinion, barring one or two, most of them are data driven,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't fault data. When we say, well, you know, we're subsidizing it for, you know, $14 a ride, I got a problem with that.
Yeah, numbers don't lie.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Unless you're willing to somehow, you know, press gang people onto the boat. You know, I don't see how it fits. And I believe, again, that some of those people would come anyway through different mode of transportation. You know, driving around, bottom line.
Mhm.
But, you know, people will still come to some of those events. So. And you brought up a good point about, you know, days and stuff, and I still remember, I can still tell you when, what is the event in Silverdale, Whaling
Whaling
Days,
Days, mhm.
you know, it's third, you know, that's how they advertise it, is the third weekend of I think it's June, I can't remember if it's June or July, but, you know,
Mhm.
That's how they do everything. I assume the Saints is doing the same
Yes.
way.
Same thing, second Sunday of the month.
Yep.
And I think more organizations are doing that.
Yeah.
They're not bouncing around.
Yeah.
Chris Craft is always the same. Mustangs are the same. Saints are the same. Memorial Day, Labor Day.
Yeah, so it'll just be interesting to see what your talks are with Bremerton. Maybe they agree. Maybe they, when they see the numbers as well.
Who's the chair of their? Do you know who the chair of their economic is?
They don't have it.
They don't have
Yeah,
a-
in the past, it's always been the mayor and or clerk that attends the meeting.
Does our mayor attend that meeting?
No, it's the chair of our economic development committee, so Beck.
They don't have that type of committee. That was my job.
So, is this what we want to kind of go in with and
Yeah, I think so.
consensus kind of? You good with?
I'm good with it.
Yeah,
Keith?
good.
Yeah? And you got two thumbs, so let's just go.
Mhm.
Any pitfalls that you've seen?
No?
Okay. You good?
Yep.
All right. The meeting of LTAC is adjourned. And then we